So, Brendan Schaub seemingly has a lot to say about McGregor and UFC's dynamics. He stated that he doesn't believe UFC will ever give another guy as much power as they have to Conor. Let's get right into all the details that we know so far about what prompted Brendan to make this statement. Brendan Schaub's statements regarding McGregor's power in UFC. Brendan Schaub believes that the UFC have learned a lesson about what happens when one fighter is given too much power following their dealings with the notorious. McGregor is undoubtedly a fighter that holds a lot of power in the UFC. While Schaub admits that McGregor has a lot of money for the UFC, he feels that the promotion won't ever give this much power to another fighter in the future. According to Schaub, there will never be another personality like McGregor who could single-handedly rake in millions of dollars in revenue for the promotion. In a recent episode of The Schaub Show, the former UFC heavyweight said that people would think that the bigger the name is, the more success they have, and UFC learned his firsthand from McGregor. He continued to say that UFC gave McGregor way too much power and profited substantially off of it, and so they probably wouldn't change a thing, but they also won't allow any other fighter to have as much power as they gave to Conor. Moreover, he speculates that they learned their lesson and that McGregor has definitely made hundreds of millions of dollars off the franchise. Regardless of making more off of him than he has off of them, they've learned their lesson, which makes getting another Conor McGregor highly unlikely. Lightning doesn't strike twice after all. Now on to other UFC news that's been around the block. Sean O'Malley eyes at least 2 fights in 2022. The Sean O'Malley takeover may have to wait another year. O'Malley stated on his Sugar Sunday Service podcast that his appearances in 2022 could be limited as he recovers from a thumb injury suffered in his recent win over Rolian Paiva at UFC 269 in December. According to the official list of medical suspensions, O'Malley could be out until June, pending clearance from an orthopedic doctor. The 27-year-old fighter is well aware that the fans have been clamoring for him to continue to stay active after logging 3 UFC appearances in 2020 and 2021, and that he is expected to eventually take a larger step up in competition. However, O'Malley, who recently made his MMA Fighting Global Rankings debut, tied for the number 14 spot at bantamweight, has said on multiple occasions that as long as his paycheck remains the same, he doesn't care who he fights. Sean is looking at his time off as a chance to sharpen his skills once he's cleared to train. He then plans to use the rest of the year to prove his value to the UFC before going on a serious run up the ladder in 2023. Tofik Musayev inks deal to join Bellator MMA. Ryzen veteran Tofik Musayev will look to shake up the lightweight division after inking a deal to join the roster of Bellator MMA. Promotion officials confirmed the signing to MMA Fighting on Monday, following an initial report from Ariel Helwani. With an 18-4 record, Musayev brings an impressive resume with him to Bellator, where he will look to join into the deep end at 155 pounds after picking up a number of high-profile wins while competing in Ryzen. His debut is expected sometime in 2022. Holm casts doubt on viability of featherweight division long-term. Comments on Kayla Harrison possibly joining UFC. Prior to a knee injury that prevented her from fighting, Holm was originally scheduled for a featherweight bout against Norma Dumont in October. The matchup was one of necessity after Holm grew frustrated with a long list of potential opponents either turning down fights or showing a lack of interest in facing her at 135 pounds. According to Holm, that's how pretty much every fight at 145 pounds has come about during her UFC career, which is why she's never truly considered herself a featherweight. 2-time Olympic gold medalist and back-to-back PFL champion Kayla Harrison is currently exploring free agency. UFC president Dana White confirmed the promotion's interest in her. Harrison has primarily competed at lightweight during her career, but has fought at 145 pounds. That'd likely become her only weight class if she ultimately signs with the UFC. Like any other fighter considering their options, Holm would welcome somebody as talented counted as Harrison joining the UFC ranks, but she still can't help but wonder if even her arrival would change the UFC's plans for the featherweight division long term. Cyril Gane addresses Francis Ngannou snub. MMA fans have heard from Cyril Gane's coach about the viral snub that boosted interest in his UFC 270 title unifier against Francis Ngannou. But until today, the interim champ hadn't addressed it. On Monday's edition of the MMA Hour, UFC interim heavyweight champion Gane spoke out against Ngannou's behavior backstage at UFC 268, likening it to a teaching moment he'd have with his family. Gane said he had no desire to get in the middle of a public feud between his coach, Fernand Lopez, and Ngannou, who once trained with both of them at the MMA Factory in Paris. But he echoed Lopez in expressing disappointment about another person caught up in the drama. UFC middleweight Nassourdine Imamov, a longtime Ngannou sparring partner who just picked up an octagon win before the awkward interaction. Maisha Tate versus Lauren Murphy targeted for UFC's May 14th event. The former bantamweight champion is expected to drop down to 125 pounds and face off with Lauren Murphy at the UFC's event on May 14. Multiple sources confirmed the matchup to MMA Fighting on Monday, with verbal agreements in place from both athletes. No contracts have been signed at this time. The bout was initially slated for UFC 273 in April, but a scheduling conflict led to the change of date, per sources. The move to featherweight for Tate has been rumored for several weeks after she hinted at the possibility following a unanimous decision loss to Ketlen Vieira in the last outing. Tate returned from retirement in 2021 and promptly defeated Marion Reneau in her first fight back before falling to Vieira in a 5-round main event in November. Kevin Holland books welterweight debut against Alex Oliveira at UFC 272. Kevin Holland is officially making his move down to welterweight after booking a fight against Alex Oliveira at the upcoming UFC 273 card on March 5th. Multiple sources confirmed the matchup to MMA Fighting on Monday after Holland first announced the news via his OnlyFans page. The fighter has been planning to move down to 170 pounds for the past couple of months after previously competing in the middleweight division in the UFC. While he has found at welterweight in the past, Holland will be competing in the division for the first time since 2017, when he was part of the roster at LFA. Holland told MMA Fighting this past December that he didn't take his previous cuts down to welterweight seriously enough, but he's taking a much different approach this time around. He's also expecting to finally negate the size advantage held against him so often at middleweight, where he suffered losses in 2 of his last 3 fights in the division. Cheyenne Vlismas, unsure when she'll fight again since UFC win. Cheyenne Vlismas ended the toughest year of her life with the best performance of her UFC career and her second consecutive fight night bonus. But where that momentum will take her this year is a bit of a mystery. Vlismas earned a unanimous decision win over Mallory Martin at UFC Vegas 44, in a bout that earned the event's Fight of the Night award. The performance left fans excited to see what the future holds for the Warrior Princess. Unfortunately, due to circumstances in her personal life behind the scenes, she has no idea when she'll be able to make her first 2022 appearance. The win over Martin was fortunate, considering what Vlismas had to do at the end of 2021. Professionally, she was able to pick up a big win and some much-needed income. Sadly, she was also forced to make a tough decision to leave Las Vegas and move to an undisclosed location outside of the US. Charles Oliveira opened to fight with fellow UFC champions Alexander Volkanovski and Kamaru Usman. Charles Oliveira could be the next UFC champion pursuing double gold. Fresh off a thrilling 3rd-round submission over Dustin Poirier in his first defense of the lightweight belt at UFC 269, Du Bronx told MMA Fighting's Portuguese-language podcast Trocacao Franca he agrees with his coach Diego Lima that chasing more titles is definitely doable. Lima recently told Trocacao Franca that it would be viable to return to 145 pounds to challenge Alexander Volkanovski, or move up to 170 pounds and face reigning welterweight King Kamaru Usman. Oliveira has one preference, but wouldn't turn down the other. That's all for now, folks, but we'll be back with more interesting videos. To stay informed about the sports industry, keep watching our videos. Tell us what you think about what Schaub had to say about McGregor by sounding off in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe before leaving. Goodbye for now.